Sup, everybody? Hope you're having a blessed day. On Tuesdays, every other Tuesday, we talk about cryptocurrency, mainly Bitcoin in this group chat, in this group. But we got a great Bitcoin expert, I would say. From watching his videos, it gave me more faith to buy more and more, and even converting that XRP into having a whole Bitcoin, my third Bitcoin, was
Wow.
because of, watching your videos. And yeah, I'm so glad that you're here. And if you could introduce yourself, and then we could get started from there.
Yeah, absolutely. My name is Rijat. I wouldn't even say that I'm an expert in crypto. I don't really think there is any person who's an expert. I think pretty much everybody knows what they know, and then there are other people who know other things. I mean, there's so many things that I'm learning every single day that I've never even heard about, and I think the right way to say is somebody who's just still learning. I mean, I think that's the case for everyone, right? Everybody's still learning. Nobody fully knows everything about Bitcoin. Nobody can know everything. I don't think there's anybody in the world who you can ask any question to and they'll be able to give you an answer. So I come from that space. Um, I have my CFA charter. I used to work in finance. I used to work as a fixed income analyst at TD Bank, and I quit my job in 2021. It wasn't specifically to talk about Bitcoin. Over time, I started talking more about Bitcoin, but I started with personal finance, with stocks, real estate. I used to be a realtor at one point for a little bit, so I left my job at TD. I started doing the realtor side of things because I thought I could do well in sales. And the first year I did do pretty well. But once the social media stuff started working a little bit better, I think I found it a little bit more interesting than real estate. And then somehow it turned into me learning more about Bitcoin, starting to talk about Bitcoin, and here I am.
So, what was like your first introduction into Bitcoin?
So I started reading a book called The Bitcoin Standard. There was somebody who posted about it on Instagram on one of their stories, and they they talked about how Bitcoin is the best form of money in the world, and I didn't really get what they were talking about. I didn't really quite understand it. It took me a lot of time to actually wrap my head around it, though. I read the book, asked myself questions, read the book, asked questions online, went on YouTube and started listening to more podcasts. So the book, The Bitcoin Standard, is by Saifedean Ammous. He also has a podcast where he goes really deep into a lot of different topics. And if you want to learn more about Bitcoin, listen to his podcast. His podcast is amazing because he talks about all these niche topics that most other podcasts don't really go into. Like for example, Fedimint. Most of you guys probably haven't even heard of Fedimint, but he talks about it in multiple episodes, which to me is just, it's amazing.
What is
Um,
that, by the
so
way?
Fedimint is basically like it's a federation that you're using as a central party within, let's say, a community, and you have a certain number of people who can control the keys to your Bitcoin, and you can assign these people to control that wallet, like a community wallet, basically. So you
Mm.
have, I don't know, keep in mind, I don't know the exact details. I haven't done the deep dive into this. Only heard about it here and there. But essentially, it's like a community fund in a way, like where you can have money that's create so you people deposit money into this wallet, and then the community can basically create coins or something that basically backs is backed by that Bitcoin. I think that's the best way to explain it, but it's almost like a trusted way to spend Bitcoin without having to transact on the base layer.
Gotcha.
So he talks about that kind of stuff. He talks about all these deep, in-depth topics that are completely in the weeds and most people haven't even heard of them. Um, but yeah, I think that really helped listening to the audiobook for that, reading the book. His other books are great as well. I think you really need to understand how the fiat currency system works to understand how Bitcoin works. If you don't understand fiat, you're not going to get the Bitcoin stuff. And I know you probably talk about fiat a lot because you talk about land flipping, which is key.
Yeah. So that's what I got from the Bitcoin standard. It was more so learning about money in general.
Yeah.
That's what I really took from that. And then it just like to me, Bitcoin made sense once they started talking about Bitcoin. For me, it felt like they was talking more about the fiat system compared to Bitcoin. And then once he got into Bitcoin, it was like, yeah, this actually makes sense.
Yeah, and he has a second book called The Fiat Standard where he talks more about how fiat currencies work, and I think that was a really great book as well. Um, but I think building that foundation of knowing that fiat is a scam, most people aren't there yet. Most people aren't even close to that yet. I think most people are probably like a decade behind on that. But once you hit that part of your life, once you start understanding that about finances, you start looking for a solution. And I think that's what the Bitcoin standard really did for me. Before reading the Bitcoin standard, I didn't really think of it that way. I didn't really think that fiat was a scam. So I did my CFA, like I said, but we didn't really we didn't talk at all about how the US dollar could be replaced, right? I mean,
Hmm.
of course, I don't know when it's going to happen. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on thinking that it could happen, but I mean, after doing the CFA, after really studying Bitcoin, I kind of thought more about how the dollar could be replaced because you're the dollar in my maybe this is a little bit of a an exaggeration, but I genuinely think that the dollar is designed to steal from us. It's designed to make us broke, right? And it's designed to transfer wealth from the people at the bottom who save in dollars to the people at the top who save
Who's
in real estate and stocks and all these
who's
other
investing?
assets. Sorry?
I'm gonna mute everybody. If you could unmute yours.
Oh, oh yeah. So it was yeah, once you start figuring out that fiat is a scam, I think Bitcoin becomes a lot easier to understand.
So when you say fiat, because some people new here, they might not know what you're speaking about. If you could
Right.
explain.
So fiat currencies are currencies that are issued by government. So they're basically money by decree. So your government tells you your whole life that okay, this is where you're going to use this money. They tell you so they start with telling your grandparents. Your grandparents get used to it. Maybe they gave some pushback to it, and then they tell their kids, well, your parents get used to it. Your parents lived their entire lives using these pieces of paper that are money. So your government issued this money and they printed it out of nothing. And then by the time we're in that spending part of our lives, we don't even question it. So fiat currencies are basically pieces of paper that governments have created that we think have value. So let's say you have a $50 bill, a $100 bill. That $100 bill or that $50 bill cost 10 cents to make, but we value it at $50 or $100. So we're willing to give away $100 worth of goods for that thing that costs 10 cents. And like if you think of the scam here, I think it goes a lot deeper than just that, the cost of creating that currency. The scam here is that they can create more and more as much as they want to, and they can buy our time, right? They can buy our energy, they can buy our freedom, they can buy everything from us with money that they create out of nothing. So it's a completely broken system, and a lot of people have been completely scammed by this, right?
It's wild because we have to pay taxes.
Yeah,
So it's like we lose across the board.
yeah,
Inflation, they just
yeah.
print that millions and trillions of dollars every day on the market. And it's like we're working so hard for this, you know?
Yeah. Like you give away your time with your family, right? You give away time like where let's say you want to go play a soccer game, but your boss calls you into work to make some pieces of paper. So you're missing the soccer game to go to work. You're giving up your hobbies, you're giving up your free time to earn pieces of paper that the company that's paying you, they can just borrow into existence. Like think about how broken that system is. It's insane. When you understand how banks create money, when you understand how if somebody takes on a mortgage, they're ahead of somebody who doesn't get to take on a mortgage. And then there's people in North America who can't take on mortgages, and then there's people in other parts of the world who can't because they just don't have access to that financial system. So let's say you have somebody who has a $10 million real estate portfolio.
Hmm.
They can borrow against that real estate portfolio because they can go to the bank and the bank will give them a mortgage against it, and the bank is going to create that money out of nothing. So the person who has that $10 million real estate portfolio, they don't have to think about delaying gratification. While people at the bottom who are earning these pieces of paper have to think about delaying gratification. They have to think about opportunity costs. They have to think about the money that they won't be able to spend on their friends and family if they go and buy a Ferrari. While the person at the top, they can spend their money on whatever the hell they want. They can buy steaks every single day. They can buy whatever, like literally whatever they want. They can buy the car, they can buy the house, they can buy the vacation home, they can go on vacation, while the people at the bottom, I mean, I would consider myself as one of the people at the bottom. I'm not even close to the top 0.01%, but of course, I'm very fortunate. I'm not going to put down anybody's situation, but I think the people at the bottom, we're all struggling to make ends meet, while the people at the top can just have more money created out of nothing. And that money is just a redistribution from all the people at the bottom to the people at the top. I mean, it's as simple as that. That's the scam, right? It keeps us working forever. We think twice before we go on vacation. We think twice before we even go out to eat, before we can really even enjoy our lives. It's a completely broken system.
Brandon asked something. He said,
Based on that comment, do you think a mortgage is actually wise since we hedge against inflation with it being backed with an asset? Yeah, 100%. In this system, if you're not taking on debt, you're the loser. So if you're not taking on the mortgage, you're the loser, right? But even the mortgage, I mean, I think there's this, if you look at it from one perspective where you're thinking of it from trying to get ahead in the fiat currency system, you have to take on a mortgage because otherwise you're going to go broke. How are you going to buy a house otherwise? How are you going to buy land? How are you going to really do anything without debt at this point? Like you can't even buy a car at this point without debt. Prices have gone absolutely insane because everybody else is taking on debt. So if you don't take on debt, you're the loser, right? But the other side of the equation is I think there's more of a moral kind of issue here. If you take on a mortgage, you're getting more money created out of nothing as well. And you're taking advantage of that person that's below you. So let's say if you take on that mortgage, you get that money created out of nothing. Or let's say you borrow money, you get a personal line of credit, your your bank created that personal line of credit out of nothing. You can go and you can borrow that money. You can go to a country where they accept US dollars and they don't have investments, and you can pay for their time, their labor, their energy with something that you got that was printed out of nothing. So I mean, there's two sides to everything, right? The mortgage, if you don't get the mortgage, then you're kind of screwed. But if you do get the mortgage, you screw over somebody else. It's almost player versus player.
so now let's go into Bitcoin. So why
Yeah.
Bitcoin?
So the reason why I like Bitcoin out of really everything else is that you can't create more Bitcoin. Nobody can create more. It's impossible. You have this network of people there's something like 100,000 computers around the world um, that are enforcing the rules of the Bitcoin network. They're called nodes. 20,000 of them are reachable. There are something like 80,000 that are hidden. Essentially, if you want to change the Bitcoin supply, you have to convince all of those people to change the supply because they're the ones who are running the code. They're the ones who are running the software. So if you want to, let's say, increase the supply, so the total supply that'll ever exist is 21 million. If you want to bump that up to, let's say, 42 million, you have to go to all of those computers. You have to go to all of the people running those computers. You have to convince them that we're going to increase the supply to 42 million. Those people probably own Bitcoin. So you have to convince people who own Bitcoin to dilute their own savings. Do you think that they would do that?
No.
Right. So I think that's how powerful it is. When you look at the current financial system, think about how government. So a lot of I mean I'm in Canada. So in Canada, the I think they're called the cabinet. I'm not too into the politics stuff, the structure, and but the cabinet in Canada, I think 40 to 60% of them own real estate properties. So what they're doing is they're artificially decreasing the supply of real estate by passing bills, passing laws, uh, red tape, taxes. They want to make sure that the supply of real estate remains as low as possible because poverty is a business, poverty is an economy of its own, right? So their goal is to keep that supply of housing low. But if let's say they figure out how Bitcoin works, let's say they figure out that Bitcoin has this finite supply, and you are saving in real estate. If they figure out how Bitcoin works, they're going to want to produce more housing because they're going to want to get elected again. So they can actually like they can flip a switch to screw you over as an investor, right? If they say that more houses can be built and you own a bunch of houses, your your investment is being diluted. So that's the broken that's the system. That's the thing that could fall apart. Nobody can change the supply of Bitcoin. They can change the supply of real estate. They can change the supply of stocks. They can companies can issue more shares, right? We know this. We've seen. I don't know if you guys are familiar with MicroStrategy. They've been issuing more and more shares. Other companies could do this and not buy Bitcoin, right? But if you if you understand Bitcoin from this perspective that there's no way to increase the supply, you understand that nobody can manipulate your savings. Nobody can steal your savings from you. In the current system, they can take it from you without even asking, without even telling you. In Bitcoin, if you have your private keys set aside, nobody can find those private keys. Nobody can take those private keys. You can literally go to the grave with your money.
So when from watching like different podcasts, Michael Saylor is one of my favorite Bitcoiners. He talks about it as like owning land in Manhattan. Can you explain that concept to
Yeah,
us?
absolutely. So Manhattan, from what I know, has a very strong foundation under it, granite, however you pronounce it, but it has a foundation that's very solid. So people want to build on Manhattan. And if you own parts of that land, then you own Manhattan. You own physical Manhattan. You own physical land that other people can rent from you. They can build on it. They can do whatever they want with it. The reason why he compares Bitcoin to Manhattan, from my understanding, is that Bitcoin also has a finite supply. It has a finite amount of it has a finite amount of what you can build on top of, essentially. It has that finite block space where you can create whatever you want to, and nobody can change that. Same thing with Manhattan. Nobody can change the supply of Manhattan real estate, Manhattan land,
Mhm.
meaning that if you own a bit of it, then you own it forever. You own one out of a finite supply forever. So let's say there are 100 square meters of land in Manhattan. Of course, there's more, but let's say there's 100. You own one. You own one out of 100 forever. If you own one Bitcoin out of 21 million, you own one out of 21 million forever. And nobody can take that away from you. Of course, if you don't store it properly, they can steal it from you. If they force you to give it to them, then of course they can take it. But nobody can take it without your permission. Nobody can take it without you knowing.
And then with supply and demand, right? Because it's so less of that land, that's
Yeah.
what's driving these prices up. So that's why I feel like Bitcoin is probably the greatest asset to me because as time goes on, it's going to be less and less. And then when these big corporations, them talk about the Bitcoin strategic reserve, it just, I feel like a lot more people is going to buy, which is going to lower the supply. And it's gonna make it, great for the people that got in. So
Yeah.
I wanted to talk about this, because a lot of people they might not be able to buy a whole Bitcoin, right? So they may feel discouraged. They may feel like, oh, I can't do this because, I don't have 80,000 right now to deploy into it. So let's talk about the Satoshi side of it. Can you explain what that is and why that's just as important as buying one whole Bitcoin right now?
Yeah, for sure. So a Satoshi is one out of 100 million for one Bitcoin. So one Bitcoin, it's like dollars and cents. So a dollar is like a Bitcoin, cents are like Satoshis. So you can divide $1 into 100 pennies, 100 cents. You can divide one Bitcoin into 100 million Satoshis. There are in total only ever going to be 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. So there's 21 million Bitcoin. Each Bitcoin can be split into 100 million units, 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis. So you can buy 1,000 of them. If you're in the US, you can buy something like 1,200 of them for $1 today. If you're in Canada, you can buy something like 800, 700, something like that for $1 today. Over time, because there's a finite number of these units, because there's a finite number of these uh, Satoshis, of these Bitcoin, it becomes more and more scarce. The people who have it aren't willing to sell it. So if you own a fraction, you're better off than somebody who owns none. Let's say you own 0.01 Bitcoin. That's 1% of a Bitcoin. Today that costs like $850, $860. If you own if you own 1 million Satoshis or 0.01 Bitcoin, you're probably going to be ahead of 95% of the world because it's mathematically impossible for everybody on Earth to own a million Satoshis. If you split those 2.1 quadrillion Satoshis with every single person on Earth, 8 billion people, you'd be able to own 262,000 Satoshis. So that's 0.00262 Bitcoin. So if you get to 0.01, you have 4 times the amount that everybody could get if it was split equally. But then you have to also remember there are people who own tens of Bitcoin, hundreds of Bitcoin, multiple Bitcoin, thousands of Bitcoin. Every Bitcoin that's taken out of the supply eliminates essentially what is it, 4,000 people from owning 0.025 Bitcoin. I don't know what the exact calculation on that, maybe 400, but it eliminates a certain number of people from ever being able to own 0.002625 Bitcoin. So that
Wow,
number
I
that I
didn't
came,
know that.
right? So if you think about it, if you stack your 0.01, you're ahead of where 99% of the world, or sorry, not 99, maybe 90% of the world can ever be. There, like Michael Saylor, he owns 500,000 Bitcoin. He's eliminated 500,000 whole coiners. Like if you
Mm,
think about that, that's insane.
that is wild.
That's insane, right? Like when you think about it, if people in this group, if you guys can own 0.01, zero point 0.1, it may not seem like a lot today, but in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, if you keep stacking, you're going to accumulate a massive amount of Bitcoin and it's going to have so much wealth. You might think, okay, today it's worth $850. If it goes to if it goes to let's say $10,000, maybe you won't be able to do much, but you'll be able to, like, let's say, start a business. You'll be able to do something, right?
Yeah.
That's the point. It'll go to 10,000. It'll go to 100,000. I think it'll go significantly higher than where it is today because there's a finite number of these available. I like to say there's this phrase that I like to say a lot. It's that Bitcoin will run out at every price. And what that means is that no matter what price Bitcoin goes to, eventually the sellers at that price are going to run out. So you might see Bitcoin fluctuating. The question here, there's a question here: why does the price of Bitcoin fluctuate up and down? Uh, the the reason why it fluctuates up and down is because people are willing to give away their Bitcoin due to, let's say, fear and greed. They want US dollars. They want to take the US dollars out of the market. They may be scared that Bitcoin's price is going to go lower. So Bitcoin's price is going to always fluctuate. People have short time horizons. Some people have a long time horizon. Over time, every time somebody buys Bitcoin, the way that I think of it, every time somebody buys Bitcoin, let's say 1% of that is going to be put into cold storage and it's never going to be sold again. And that's what creates that base. So the base is the number of people who are willing to buy Bitcoin and just put it away, never sell it again. So that base keeps increasing. If you, so Brandon, I think that's a really relevant question, and I think it's really important to answer. So I want to show you a chart. Can I just share my screen?
Yeah, I'm going to make you host. Just, or actually, we could do
Oh
that.
yeah, it just let me send a request. Okay, here.
Yeah.
So this is the screen that I want to show you. So I want to show you the 4-year moving average of Bitcoin. So if you look at the 4-year moving average price, in the short term, it's going to fluctuate. It's going to go up, come down, go up, come down. It's always going to do that. That'll keep happening. That's going to happen forever as long as Bitcoin is priced in US dollars. But what you're going to see is that the base keeps increasing. So here you see that the base at one point was $200, $240 or so. Then the base went to $3,800. Then the base went to $5,300. Then the base went to $23,000 or $16,000 or so. Over time, this base is going to keep rising and rising until we see that Bitcoin's price goes to $100,000 and it never comes below that. Then it's going to go to 200,000. It's never going to come below that. Then it's going to go to 300, 400, 500,000. It's going to keep rising and rising because the number of people who are willing to sell their Bitcoin at these prices will always run out.
Yeah,
So
it's gonna.
over time, because of emotions, people are selling, people are buying. If there's more people selling than buying, the price comes down. If there's more people buying than selling, the price comes up.
And when you were saying that point zero 0.01 Bitcoin, for $800, y'all, once Bitcoin reaches, let's say, $1 million, which may happen very soon or within the next couple of years, that point zero 0.01 or that point 0.1 could be a six-figure payday or six figures in your account at point one. So that's why it's like, or when it gets to 10 million, it could be a six figure. So put in small amounts now to reach a different level in the future. It's like you're paying your future self right now. That's how I be trying to tell you guys, like, start buying little bits of it now because once more people get into it, the supply gets lower. And y'all know with supply and demand, that's when it's, important. So we getting in at a very early time right now.
Yeah, and you can buy as much as you want. You can buy a dollar's worth. You can buy $2, $5. Like there are days when I buy like $1.80, because that's all I have to spare, right? If I buy $1.80's worth of Bitcoin, that gives me like 1,800 satoshis. Soon that'll be worth, in my opinion, that'll be worth $180. It'll be worth $200. It'll be worth $500. But eventually, it'll be worth a lot more than what it is today. So buy whatever you can, stack however much you can. It doesn't matter how little it is. It doesn't matter how much you can buy. Even if you could buy $10 a month, $20, $50 a month, you don't have to buy it all at once. You don't have to buy all $850 worth at once. You can buy it over time. You can stagger the purchases out over years if you want to. Like you can keep buying over the next 10 years, buy $10 a month, buy $10 a month, keep going, keep going. And eventually you'll have that point zero 0.01, you'll have point zero 0.02, point zero 0.03. Buy whatever you can, because later on you're not going to regret it. I know that for a fact. Eventually you're going to be very happy that you did.
You heard that story of that person that bought $35 a day for a couple years, and now they're
No.
like a multimillionaire.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's insane.
But
Yeah, I'm not surprised. That's the thing. It keeps, if you keep stacking, that's the key. Just keep stacking, keep adding more and more to your wallet, and over time, it's going to increase in value until you're able to pay for pretty much everything. The way that I see it, every amount of Bitcoin is eventually going to retire you.
wow.
It depends on how long you wait, though. That's the thing.
Yeah. So Brandon asks, how do I use Bitcoin to actually buy things without actually selling my Bitcoin?
So you could do two things. There's a website called Bitrefill where you can buy gift cards for your Bitcoin. You can also do something like borrowing against your Bitcoin, but I personally don't like that. The reason why I don't like borrowing against Bitcoin is because it's extremely volatile. So let's say if Bitcoin were to if Bitcoin were to collapse at some point and you borrowed against your Bitcoin, your lender is going to take your Bitcoin. Oh, sorry, your lender is going to sell your Bitcoin, and you're not going to get that Bitcoin back. That's one of the issues with borrowing against Bitcoin. So there's some liability there where you may not want to have that kind of risk, because if you want to borrow against your Bitcoin, you have to give it to someone else. You have to give the keys to someone else so that they can liquidate it if you need to pay them back, or if you can't pay them back for whatever reason. Let's say you can't pay them back, they have to sell your Bitcoin. You're never going to get it back unless you buy more after, of course. That's the difference. But the issue with borrowing against Bitcoin is that you have to give it to someone to get them to give you fiat in exchange for it. The way that I do it is, if I need to buy something, I just sell a little bit of Bitcoin. Like if I don't have extra fiat currencies, if I don't have extra US dollars, Canadian dollars, whatever it is, if I don't have access to a credit card, I usually just use my credit card. I did buy, let's say, this mic here. I bought it with Bitcoin, just almost like a symbolic gesture. Um, I I bought this before I really started making money on social media, and I used my credit card, but I didn't have enough money to pay my credit card off after. So I sold some Bitcoin to pay off that credit card, and that's perfectly fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with giving away a little bit of Bitcoin. The way that I see it, Bitcoin is just a savings account. It's just a way for you to um, store value for the future. So if you have extra fiat, you buy Bitcoin. If you have too little fiat, you sell some Bitcoin. I think that's the best way to do it. Um, like I said, you can use Bitrefill. That's a company that allows you to buy gift cards. Other than that, I think the best way would just be to sell some Bitcoin. The borrowing adds some risk to your portfolio. So
Austin said, what's the best way to buy and store Bitcoin?
So what you can do is you could just go into any exchange. It doesn't really matter which exchange you're in. If you're in the US, you can use River, you can use Swan. I don't know about the specific exchanges. I haven't used River or Swan. I'm in Canada. They're in the US. So if you want to, you can use those to do the research, try to figure out which one the best one is. I've heard really good things about River.
You don't
There
like
are some.
Coinbase?
Sorry,
You don't like Coinbase?
Coinbase is expensive from what I've seen.
Mm.
I don't know if they've decreased their fees or if they have some way to decrease the fees that you pay. But when I was buying Bitcoin through them, they'd charge you like $1 fee per transaction or something like that. So if you're buying a small amount of Bitcoin, it adds up quick. Like if you're buying $10 worth of Bitcoin, then you're paying $1 fee per $10 purchase. So you're paying 10% in fees, right? So it adds up really quick. But if you're buying, let's say 1,000, 2,000, $5,000 worth of Bitcoin, maybe it's worth it. Oh yeah, Coinbase has some restrictions. I've seen that before as well.
Yeah, I've been using Strike.
Oh yeah, Strike is good too, from what I've heard. I haven't personally used Strike or River or Swan, but I've heard good things about them. And then after that, what you do is you just transfer your Bitcoin to your own wallet. So just make sure that you want to learn about something called UTXO management. Basically, every Bitcoin, when you send and receive Bitcoin, you're getting chunks of Bitcoin. It's like getting chunks of gold. So what UTXO management is essentially you're taking your chunks of Bitcoin and you're combining them. You basically have to pay a transaction fee for doing so. So what you want to do is you want to make sure that you don't transfer very small amounts from the exchange into your wallet. That's the key. If you transfer very small amounts from the exchange to your wallet, then you're going to have a lot of UTXOs. UTXOs are unspent transaction outputs, and to combine them in the future, you're going to have to pay a lot of fees. So let's say, for example, you have a bunch of UTXOs, a bunch of little chunks of Bitcoin that are worth 500, 1,000, 2,000 Satoshis. What you'd have to do at some point is if you want to pay for something, you'd have to consolidate those UTXOs. You'd have to put them all together and you'd have to pay a fee based on how many UTXOs you have. So what I would do is um, the best way to prepare for this is make sure that you only withdraw Bitcoin from an exchange if you have 0.01 Bitcoin. Some people say a little lower, some people say 0.005, so 500,000 Satoshis. But I would say the minimum you want to withdraw from an exchange is like 500 to $1,000 worth. And then you can
Got
combine those UTXOs later.
That makes sense. So like for somebody that is buying small amounts of basically what he's saying is don't take those from the exchange into your wallet, into your ledger, whichever one you use,
Yeah,
uh, because those transaction fees like adds up. Okay.
they add
Yeah.
up quick. Yeah.
That's wild. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, they add up so quick. And I think these are things that over time you kind of figure out. I didn't know that until maybe a year before, a year, maybe 2 years ago either. So I
Okay.
don't blame you.
So in terms of market what's it called? Global market cap, or can you speak about that? Because that was another thing that intrigued me. Like Bitcoin is at 1.7 trillion compared to like gold 20 trillion, or real estate, I think it's at like 30 or 40 trillion. Uh
Yeah.
that's
So
why
real,
I've heard that, Bitcoin could skyrocket in price just off of that
yeah,
market cap. That's why the price isn't that high at 80,000. So can you talk about that for a little bit?
yeah, absolutely. So the way that I see it, so real estate has a $300 trillion market cap.
Oh, that's 300? Wow.
300. I think stocks is like 100, 150 or so, and bonds are about 300. Then gold is, I think it was 20 you said. I haven't checked recently, but it's
Yeah.
something along those lines. The reason why all these assets have these massive market caps is because people use them to store value. They use them to save for the future. So let's say you have a real estate investor. They tell you that they invest in real estate, they get cash flows, they get tax benefits. Of course, those are benefits. But the thing is that the main reason why people are buying real estate is because the property's value goes up. If the property's value didn't go up, I guarantee you that people wouldn't be flocking to buy real estate,
Hmm.
right? So the reason why property values go up, of course, is the supply and demand. So what people are doing is they're buying real estate because they know that it's very difficult to produce. They know that over time, more and more dollars can chase houses because dollars can be created out of nothing. So real estate now has this $300 trillion market cap, which is absolutely massive,
Yeah, that's wow.
insane. And it's because people use real estate to store value. They use it to to save their wealth for the future. And if you think about Bitcoin from the same perspective, real estate has all these all these things holding it back, in my opinion. I think if real estate didn't have all these things that hold it back, like you need a realtor, you need to pay property taxes, you're stuck in one location. If somebody hurts you, or if somebody comes into your property and that says, or so let's say for example, if your government says we're gonna build over this, there's nothing you can do to stop them,
Yeah.
right? There's all these things that hold real estate back from being even bigger. And I think that's what Bitcoin is. So Bitcoin is all of those things that real estate isn't, but then it's even better. So Bitcoin is the store of value with a finite supply. Real estate doesn't have a finite supply. Stocks don't have a finite supply. Gold doesn't have a finite supply. Real estate is uncensorable. It's censorship resistant. Gold can be censored. If you're going to hold gold, you're probably going to keep it at a bank. You're not going to keep $1 billion or $10 million worth of gold at your house, right? Wealthy people would keep it at a bank. So it's centralized. That's one issue. Real estate is also centralized. If you let's try not paying your mortgage for a couple months, or try not paying your mortgage for like 6 months and see what happens. Try not paying your property taxes for like a year and see what happens, right? So all these there's not you don't have to deal with any of this with Bitcoin. So the way that I see it, right now Bitcoin is worth $1.7 trillion because 99% of the world doesn't understand it. 99% of the world have no idea what it is. And eventually, the people who own all these other assets are going to move their wealth from those assets to Bitcoin. That's what I think. Maybe I'm wrong here. Obviously, do your research, try to figure out why I'm saying this, try to figure out the foundation for why I'm saying this. But eventually, I think that all these people who own all these other assets are going to move into Bitcoin because it's the best asset, because it's the best way to store your value. There's no real estate, there's no property taxes, there's no realtors, there's
No
no lawyers,
tenants.
no tenants. Exactly, that's the key. No tenants. You don't have to do like 10 times the work. Real estate is a lot of work. You can make money from it, but it's a lot of work. But even then, let's say you own 100 rental properties. You're probably doing more work and you're probably taking on more headache than somebody who has 100 Bitcoin,
Mm.
right? The person who has 100 Bitcoin has to deal with nothing. They don't have to deal with insurance. They don't have to deal with property taxes. They don't have to deal with putting their money into their accounts at the right time. They don't have to deal with realtors. They don't have to deal with tenants destroying their property. They don't have to deal with insurance not paying out, right? All those things are eliminated. So I think because of that, Bitcoin is going to take over all those markets. I think Bitcoin can completely just destroy the bond market. Why do people hold bonds? They hold them because they want to save for the future. Why do people hold stocks? Right now, people just blindly buy index funds, even though they have no idea what companies they're buying. They have no idea which companies they're supporting, right? And I think all of that passive flows of cash are going to go into Bitcoin.
So let's say Bitcoin gets to 20 trillion where gold is, right? What do you think the price would be?
So at that time, if you just divide 20 trillion um, by the 21 million supply, so it should be around 850, 900,000.
Ooh,
Yeah. So 20 million or 20 trillion is crazy. 20
that's
trillion divided by
crazy. And
21 million.
that's not even high to me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Or
952K. I mean, like, people, actually, I wanted to tell you guys that the CFA Institute investigated me for being too bullish on Bitcoin. I had a post where I said Bitcoin's going to 100,000. This was way before. This was at like 30, 40K. So I had a post that said Bitcoin's going to 100,000. It's going to a million, 10 million, $100 million. And the CFA Institute investigated me for this because I was too bullish. I actually think Bitcoin it's going to go up forever.
yeah.
There's no stopping it because there's more and more dollars that can be created. There are $900 trillion worth of assets in the system that can be redistributed from, and it can all go into Bitcoin.
And I don't think we understand how early we are. Like this is only 15 years in. This is
Yeah,
something our kids are going to be using or storing their value or medium exchange, or they might make this into the new fiat, right? Where it's the Bitcoin standard. I
yeah,
know in 1971, right, we was in the gold standard based on, reading the book. So, they could always possibly change that with the greatest asset of all time, which I think is
yeah,
Bitcoin.
absolutely. I think Bitcoin can basically replace the entire financial system. Like if you think about it right now, how many people are using their time, energy, and resources to make the financial system work the way it does? All of that labor is basically being replaced. It's all good. It's like how AI is taking over jobs. Bitcoin is taking over banking jobs.
Mm, it's wild.
Insane, because you don't need bankers, you don't need tellers, you don't need these safes that banks have, these massive vaults. You don't need to go in for cash. You just pay for everything with Bitcoin. You can just use a wallet. You can use your phone, your computer, however you want to do it. You can just use that to pay for things. And then people say that, oh, if the internet goes down, what's going to happen to Bitcoin? Everything is going to go down. What are we going to do if the internet isn't working? We wouldn't even be able
Right.
to, we wouldn't even be on this call if the internet wasn't working, right? If electricity went down, think about how long we would even survive. I think the majority of humans wouldn't survive more than like 3 4 months if electricity went away. But then by that time, we'd figure out how to bring electricity back. We'd figure out
Facts.
how to
Yeah.
generate electricity again, and Bitcoin would be back to where it was before. But the thing is with Bitcoin that it's global. Even if electricity in one area goes down, if the internet in one area goes down, Bitcoin will still be used around the world. It'll be used, let's say, in China, in Japan, in India, in Africa, in Russia. It'll still be used there. So if the electricity and the internet goes down in North America, it'll still be used in these other parts of the world. So that record of you owning your Bitcoin is still going to be there.
Yeah. So that's why we have to all buy some Satoshis today. Get
That's the key.
as many as possible.
Yeah.
Cause your 30 or 20, 30 year old self is gonna be so proud of you. That's why I try to tell you every single crypto call. Your 20, do this right now for your 20, 30 year old self, because it's gonna be up. It's gonna go up.
Yeah. Like if you can buy, let's say for example, you have a newborn child. If you buy them like $1,000 worth of Bitcoin the day they're born, by the time they're 20, that $1,000 is going to be worth way, way more. Right? You're buying them. If your kid is born today, you're buying them more than 1 million satoshis. You're buying them 1.2 million satoshis if you're in the U.S. So if you buy them 1.2 million satoshis, by the time they're 20, maybe it'll be worth $100,000. Right?
Wow.
That $100,000 may not be worth that much, but think about it this way: if you had bought stocks, you would have probably been given them 30,000, 40,000.
Mm-hmm.
No, not even that much actually. You'd probably be giving them like 10K.
Yeah. And 100,000, that might be low. It could be way more than that,
Yeah, it could be way way more. Yeah, 100%.
That's the beauty of this asset.
Yeah.
Does anybody got any other questions before we wrap up? I appreciate you, Rajat. I love your channel. I also love your group. I'm one of your students in your group. So maybe if you could talk about that. And
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually have my own school group. If you want to join, go for it.
do you have a
I
link
can
for that?
Yeah, I can put the link in the chat here. Let me do that now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have my own group. We talk about Bitcoin all the time. We are talking about Bitcoin so we do live sessions every week. We do twice a week actually. So here's the group. It's $20 a month. You can join it. You can leave whenever you want to. But I actually want to share all the content that's on there. I feel like this is extremely valuable. So we have the Mindful Money and Bitcoin group. We have the Bitcoin Fundamentals mini course. I was charging for this course before. I was charging $50 per person, and I think this has orange pilled something like 2,500 people. So you get access to this for $20 a month. You can stay in the community for later on if you want to. There's also tons of live sessions. So we have all these live sessions. I haven't uploaded the more recent ones, but we have all these live sessions that we've done. We have live sessions every week, twice a week actually. You can also follow me on YouTube if you want. YouTube, I'm constantly posting as much as I can. I try to post every single day. It's a lot of work. So go watch the videos. I'll post my YouTube channel here as well. Either way, whatever you choose to do, I hope that you study Bitcoin. I hope that you put in the time to understand where it's going because it's gonna go there with or without you. It doesn't really care about you. Bitcoin doesn't care. If you don't own Bitcoin, if you think it's a scam, if you think it's a Ponzi scheme, it's because you haven't put in the time to learn about it. And at the end of the day, Bitcoin doesn't care. It doesn't matter if you own it or not. Bitcoin is going to $10 million. It's going to $100 million. It's going to $1 billion a coin, because not even just because Bitcoin is the best asset, it's also because the US dollar is the worst asset. So put in the time. Put in the time. I'm not even exaggerating. Put in 10, 20, 30 hours. Learn about this thing. I have tons of videos on my channel, 300 videos, free content. I'm constantly trying to post whatever comes to mind about Bitcoin. So put in the time, it will be worth it.
For sure. And Luis asks, how would I put my Bitcoin in a trust?
I don't know too much about that. There are some services that offer you, they offer you those services. They're companies. I'm not too sure about how you would do that personally. I'm not in that side of things. I'm more in the education side. The putting Bitcoin in a trust might be something that you'd have to talk to a lawyer about.
For sure. Yeah, this was great. I thank you. I appreciate you. And when is your next live call?
So we have our live calls on Thursdays and Sundays.
Okay, perfect.
If you guys want, actually, no. There's just that one link. I was thinking, if you want, you can join the call. You can join the group for a week, 2 weeks, whatever you want to, and you can cancel whenever you want. There's no need to stay. You can watch all the old live sessions that you can cancel if you want to. But I think it's gonna be worth it because there's a lot of people on there who are having conversations. Elijah and I had a very long conversation last week, or it was on
Where
Sunday, I think it was. We were
uh
talking about just random topics that even I hadn't really thought too much about before. It was really fun, but the conversations are great just because there's more perspectives, there's more people talking about the things that more people should be learning about.
yeah, for sure. I appreciate you. And I appreciate y'all for showing up, showing out. Let's flip this land and buy Bitcoin, y'all. All right. Y'all have a good night. I'll see you guys Thursday.